Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. It wasn't every day you met new neighbors, especially not ones who looked like they'd stepped out of a sci-fi horror flick. But hey, life on Earth had taken a bizarre turn since humanity discovered interstellar travel and the so-called Universal Embassy program. Suddenly, the sky wasn't the limit, and the idea of neighbors stretched to encompass entire galaxies. When they first moved in next door, the aliens seemed indifferent to Earth's way of life, maybe even a little condescending. They were from the Zythic system, a species known for their supreme intellect, enhanced technology, and strange, shifting features that looked more like a liquid metal hologram than any solid form. They were all about logic and cold calculations, with an air of superiority that put them leagues above us mere earthlings, as they called us, in a tone that made it clear they didn't mean it kindly. You humans and your primitive ways, their leader, a tall Zythix named Arelor, would sneer in a voice that was too smooth and too calculating. Your world is quaint. I tried to let it slide at first. They were aliens, literal actual aliens, who'd probably been exposed to civilizations way beyond our wildest dreams. But after a few weeks of endless snickering and passive-aggressive comments about Earth's inefficient cities and our over-reliance on natural resources, my patience wore thin. Arelor's friends, equally tall and unnervingly fluid in appearance, didn't help. They seemed to consider humans as nothing more than a curiosity, like how we might view an ant farm. They'd hover around my yard, sometimes taking pictures, sometimes just observing, always talking in hushed tones. I couldn't help but feel like a science experiment they were ready to discard once they got bored. One night, after another round of earthling jibes at our latest neighborhood gathering, I'd had enough. You think you're so advanced, I said, raising my voice loud enough for the entire block to hear. But tell me, what does Zythix have that we don't? Arelor's eyes, if you could call those swirling orbs eyes, narrowed. We have enlightenment progress, and a grasp on existence beyond your understanding. Humanity has done nothing but claw at survival, inventing toys and gadgets to fill the emptiness. Some of the humans around us shifted uncomfortably, but I could see that I wasn't the only one annoyed by their superior attitude. So, fueled by the group's silent agreement and a bit too much liquid courage, I pushed back. And yet, here you are living next to us. So I guess Earth isn't as backward as you thought, huh? A murmur ran through the crowd, and Arelor's expression flickered with a brief flash of something. Annoyance, maybe? Or surprise. Whatever it was, it vanished in an instant. Yes? Well, we're here for observation, he said dismissively, waving a hand as if he were swatting away a fly. But that didn't sit right with me. Something told me there was more to their observation than they let on, and I was determined to find out what it was. I wasn't about to be looked down upon by beings who didn't even understand what it meant to be human. As the weeks passed, I started paying closer attention to their routines. The Zythixians were strangely private about their comings and goings. They rarely mingled with the rest of the community, sticking to their well-maintained property with bizarre flora that seemed to shift colors depending on the weather. They'd often disappear for hours, only to reappear with strange devices that glowed and hummed in a way that made my skin crawl. One day, Arelor found me watching from across the fence, and his expression hardened. Curiosity is a primitive trait, Earthling, he said, almost sneering. I grinned. Curiosity built the pyramids, invented electricity, and took us to the moon. Maybe that's why you're still here. His sneer faded, replaced by something else, something unreadable. He watched me with an intensity that felt almost personal. But just as quickly, he turned and left, disappearing behind the tall, almost translucent plants lining their yard. I wasn't sure what my fascination with them was. Maybe it was their arrogance, the way they looked down on everything human as if it were child's play. Or maybe it was that they felt so untouchable, so otherworldly, that I wanted to bring them down to earth, literally and metaphorically. But a small part of me was beginning to wonder if they were hiding something deeper. Then one evening I noticed something different. Their usually pristine yard was littered with debris, pieces of strange metallic objects that looked like remnants of their technology. Arelor and his friends were gathered around one of their devices, arguing in their strange, musical language. I couldn't understand a word, but I didn't need a translator to know something was wrong. Feeling a mix of worry and morbid curiosity, I decided to approach. "Everything all right here?" Arelor glared at me, but the irritation in his expression was unmistakable. "Our equipment has malfunctioned," he admitted begrudgingly. "Malfunctioned, huh?" I tried to hide my smile. "Maybe you're advanced. Tech isn't as foolproof as you thought." One of Arelor's friends made a clicking sound that I assumed was laughter. Arelor shot them a look that could have melted steel. "Our technology is flawless," he insisted. "This error was due to environmental interference. Nothing more." "Right," I said, still smirking. "I'm sure it has nothing to do with all that primitive Earth energy." Arelor glared at me, but this time I could sense the faintest hint of amusement behind the frustration. It was as if, in some weird way, he was starting to see me as something other than a simple Earthling. Over the next few days, I noticed that the aliens started to acknowledge me more. They'd nod in my direction when they passed, and sometimes Arelor would even stop to make small talk, although it was always thinly veiled in sarcasm. But there was something else there too, a curiosity, maybe even a respect. Then, one evening, Arelor invited me over. It was the last thing I'd expected, but there was a sincerity in his tone that piqued my interest. I followed him into their home, marveling at the sleek, almost organic design of their architecture, the walls shimmering with a bioluminescent glow. "You humans have resilience," he said almost to himself. "It's perplexing." "Perplexing?" I echoed, looking around at the strange devices and artifacts that decorated their home. "We've been through a lot. Maybe that's what makes us so resilient." Arelor nodded thoughtfully. For the first time, he looked genuinely interested in my perspective. It was a strange, unexpected moment. A human and an alien, bridging the vast chasm between our worlds with something as simple as curiosity. And as I looked around his home, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something far more profound than either of us could have anticipated. After that first, unexpected evening inside Arelor's home, things shifted between us. The initial tension in our neighborhood gatherings softened. His jabs became less pointed, and, to my surprise, he began seeking me out for conversation. The Zythixians still held themselves with that stiff, superior air, but Arelor seemed to be watching me with a sharper curiosity. One evening, as I stepped outside to catch some air, I found him at my fence, studying the garden with his usual detached interest. He gestured at my wild patch of tomatoes and herbs. "These plants, they're messy, inefficient," he remarked. "Yet they seem necessary to you." "They feed me," I replied. "They're life in a way. Besides, efficiency isn't everything. Sometimes a little chaos can make something stronger." He tilted his head, his swirling eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "That's the difference between us," he said. "Our world eliminated chaos ages ago. We streamlined evolution, perfected our society. You cling to unpredictability." "Well, yeah," I said. "That's part of what it means to be human." I saw the smallest flicker of intrigue in his face, and I seized the moment. "What's the real reason you're here, Arelor?" I asked. "And don't give me that observation line." He hesitated, the liquid metal of his skin rippling as though with discomfort. Finally, he replied, voice low, "Our species has long surpassed the physical. We are evolving towards something greater, but there are gaps in our understanding." "Understanding of what?" "Resilience. You endure suffering, chaos, and yet you adapt. You survive. It's an inefficiency we cannot replicate." I laughed. "So you're here to study what exactly?" "How to survive life's curveballs." "Precisely. Your species has a strange affinity for adversity. In our drive for evolution, we may have lost certain instincts." I scratched my head. So you're saying the mighty Zythixians forgot how to handle a few bumps in the road? He bristled, and I thought I'd crossed a line. But instead, he laughed, a sound that surprised both of us. Over the next few weeks, Aurelor and I started spending more time together. And it wasn't long before his visits turned from impromptu conversations to strange, scientific observations. One night he arrived with an odd, crystalline device and placed it in my hands. "Hold this," he instructed, watching my every movement with keen interest. "What does it do?" "It measures resilience." "At least it should." I held it tightly, waiting for something to happen, but nothing seemed to change. I glanced at him skeptically, but he didn't return my look. His attention was fixed on the device. "Humans are contradictory," he murmured. "You possess both physical fragility and mental endurance. These attributes, combined with your emotional complexity, create an adaptability we cannot engineer." "Emotions are part of the package," I said, shrugging. "You can't separate them from survival." Aurelor's expression softened, and for a moment he seemed almost human. "I used to think emotions were merely distractions. Now I am not so certain." Then came the day he appeared at my door looking drained, like he was carrying some weight far heavier than mere curiosity. He'd discovered something unsettling in their studies, something that seemed to bother him in a way I'd never seen before. "We've been observing human emotion and resilience for longer than you know," he admitted quietly. "What do you mean?" I asked, wary. "Our technology allows us to implant false experiences, simulate emotional stressors, even mimic human challenges," he explained. "But it is lacking. Without real adversity, without stakes, it's hollow." "That's because emotions aren't just variables to be controlled," I said. "They're raw, unpredictable. They shape us because we live them." Aurelor looked at me with a newfound intensity. "That's exactly what we're lacking. You are exactly what we need." "What do you mean?" He took a step back, his face grim. "We require a closer understanding, not just of your resilience, but of your connection, your lineage." I couldn't help but laugh. "Are you telling me that a society as advanced as yours, as superior as you claim to be, is coming to Earth to understand something as basic as family?" He nodded, solemn. "Family is a foreign concept to us, something we evolved beyond." My laughter faded. There was a chill to his words that felt wrong, almost unnatural. "So what happens now?" I asked, suddenly suspicious. Aurelor's voice dropped to a whisper. "We must merge our knowledge with yours, our essence with humanity's. Without it, we cannot complete our evolution." I took a step back, realization dawning. You're talking about creating a hybrid." Aurelor nodded. "But not in the way you might think. We have identified you as a suitable candidate, uniquely adaptable, resilient." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "But it would require something deeper, a bond that goes beyond mere biology." "Are you saying you want me to?" He cut me off, his gaze unwavering. "It's not merely reproduction, but integration. A merging of our essence, our knowledge, and yours." I didn't know whether to be flattered or horrified, but a part of me, the reckless, human part, felt a strange thrill at the challenge. Here was an entire species struggling to understand what it meant to be human, and they were looking to me to bridge that gap. "What would it entail?" I asked, voice steady. "It is a symbiosis," he explained. "A shared experience, each learning from the other. But it requires trust and openness that we have never attempted before." "And what happens if it fails?" Aurelor's face darkened. "Then our civilization will remain incomplete, stunted. We will continue to exist, but without the depth your species embodies." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I extended my hand. "If you want to understand humanity, really understand it, then we do this on my terms. No tests, no simulations. Just life as it is." He looked at my hand, then slowly clasped it, his metallic skin cool and smooth. It was the first truly human gesture I'd seen from him, and in that moment, something shifted. "I will abide by your terms," he said softly. As we stood there, an odd sensation filled the air, a charge that was both thrilling and terrifying. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just an experiment. It was the beginning of something far more profound, a bond that would bridge worlds. We had taken the first step, but neither of us knew where it would lead. Over the next few days, life took on an unfamiliar rhythm. Aurelor's visits became more frequent, his demeanor softer, more open. He'd linger in my garden, watching as I worked, his curiosity palpable. Sometimes, he'd ask questions about mundane things, a slice of bread, the smell of rain, the feel of sunlight on skin. One evening, as the sun cast long shadows, he appeared with another device, a small, oval object that pulsed with a dim, steady glow. He held it up for me to see, his expression almost reverent. "This will allow us to share memories, emotions, experiences," he explained. "If we are to truly integrate, we must bridge our minds, understand each other's worlds from the inside." I hesitated. The thought of having my mind linked to his was both fascinating and unnerving. What kind of experiences are we talking about? "Life, pain, joy, the totality of being," he said, his gaze intense. "It is the only way we can attain true connection." I looked at the device in his hand, feeling its strange warmth radiate outward. There was a risk in this, a danger that felt raw and unpredictable. But a part of me, when I barely understood, was drawn to it. "All right," I said finally. "Let's do it." Aurelor placed the device between us, and it began to emit a gentle hum. The light grew, spreading outward until it surrounded us both, an ethereal, shimmering veil that made the air feel heavy and electric. And then I felt it, a rush of sensations, memories that weren't mine, yet felt oddly familiar. I saw fragments of Aurelor's world, glimpses of a life so different from my own. His memories were stark, clinical, a place where emotion was kept at arm's length, replaced by calculated efficiency. But beneath the sterile surface, I sensed something else, a deep, unfulfilled longing. Then, just as suddenly, I felt his presence in my own mind, sifting through my thoughts, my memories. I tried to shield myself, to keep certain parts hidden, but the device stripped away all barriers. My childhood fears, my first heartbreak, the ache of loss, all of it laid bare. Aurelor's voice echoed in my mind, soft and hesitant. "So much pain, and yet you endure, you grow. That's part of being human," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. "We fall, but we get back up. It's what keeps us going." A strange warmth bloomed within me, something that felt almost like pride. And then, to my surprise, I felt an echo of that same warmth radiating from him. For hours, we sat in silence, memories flowing back and forth, mingling in a way that was both intimate and disorienting. I saw glimpses of Aurelor's past, his species' relentless pursuit of perfection, their cold, logical approach to life. It was fascinating, but it also felt empty. I sensed his discomfort as he picked up on my thoughts, his own memories darkening. "We have lost much," he admitted, his tone heavy with regret. "In our quest for efficiency, we sacrificed what made us whole. And now you think humanity can fill that void?" "Perhaps," he replied, his gaze steady. "Or perhaps we will learn that we are beyond repair. Either way, we must try." Days passed in a blur as we continued to explore each other's worlds. Aurelor's people began to notice the changes in him. Some even approached me, curious and wary, their superior airs tinged with a faint, grudging respect. But others were less welcoming. One evening, as I was leaving my house, 2 Zythixians blocked my path. Their expressions were hard, unreadable, but their message was clear. "You're meddling in matters beyond your understanding," one of them said, his voice cold and unyielding. "This integration is unnatural, dangerous." I clenched my fists, feeling a surge of defiance. "You can't understand something by observing from a distance. Sometimes you have to get your hands dirty." The other Zythixian narrowed his eyes. "Our kind does not dirty ourselves for a primitive species." Aurelor appeared behind them, his expression tense. "Enough," he said, his voice sharp. "This is my decision. The two aliens exchanged glances, their expressions darkening. Be careful, Arelor. Some bonds cannot be undone. After they left, Arelor turned to me, his expression troubled. They fear change. They see our connection as a threat to everything we have built. And what do you think? I asked, my voice soft. He hesitated, then reached out, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I think I am beginning to understand what it means to feel. In that moment, I felt the distance between us shrink, the gulf between our worlds narrowing into something small, something almost tangible. It was a fragile bond, born of curiosity and shared vulnerability, and I knew that it would not be easily broken. But even as we grew closer, the rest of the Zythixians grew more distant, their hostility simmering beneath a thin veneer of civility. They watched us with wary eyes, their disapproval palpable. I could feel the weight of their judgment pressing down on us, a constant reminder that our connection was a violation of their rigid, ordered existence. One night, as Arelor and I sat beneath the stars, he spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. If we continue this bond, they will exile me. I will lose everything. I looked at him, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. Then let them. If they can't see the value in what we're building, maybe they don't deserve you. Arelor's gaze softened, his usual aloofness replaced by something raw, vulnerable. You would defy your own kind for something uncertain? I reached for his hand, feeling the cool, metallic texture beneath my fingers. Sometimes, the things worth fighting for are the ones that scare us the most. He stared at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he leaned in, his lips brushing mine in a kiss that was both gentle and tentative. It was a strange sensation, his touch cool and unfamiliar, yet oddly comforting. When he pulled away, he looked at me with a mixture of wonder and awe. I never understood why humans risked so much for love, he murmured. Now I think I am beginning to see. As the days passed, our bond deepened, our connection growing stronger with each shared memory, each whispered conversation. But beneath the surface, I could sense the mounting tension, the growing discontent among the other Zythixians. They were watching us, waiting for us to slip, to falter. And I knew that when the time came, they would not hesitate to act. But for now, in this fragile, fleeting moment, we had each other. And that was enough. Arelor's people grew restless. Their silent disapproval had transformed into open resentment, spreading through their ranks like wildfire. They'd taken to watching me constantly, a wall of quiet, unyielding opposition that weighed down on every interaction. Even the once tolerant neighbors had begun to turn away. One evening, Arelor came to me, his face grim. They're demanding I abandon the integration. And if you don't, I asked, already sensing the answer, then I will be cast out, he said, voice soft yet resolute. Cut off from our collective, from everything I've ever known. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my anger at bay. They can't see the value in what we're building. They fear change. To them, we're breaking the natural order. Before I could reply, a small group of Zythixians approached, led by none other than the two who had previously warned me. The leader, a stern-faced alien with an aura colder than steel, spoke first. Arelor, you have disrupted the balance long enough. The collective has made its decision. Arelor didn't flinch. I won't turn back. The leader's gaze shifted to me, eyes hard and scrutinizing. You're a contaminant. Your primitive, erratic nature infects one of our brightest minds. Maybe he's seeing things more clearly than you ever could, I snapped. The Zythixian bristled, and for a moment I thought they'd lash out. But instead, they exchanged a look, a silent agreement passing between them. They turned to Arelor, voice sharp and commanding. If you persist, you will face exile. Arelor met their gaze, unwavering. Then I choose exile. For a brief second, the Zythixians looked almost shaken. Then, without another word, they disappeared, fading into the shadows with a fluidity that was both eerie and final. As the silence settled, I looked at our Aelor, feeling both a surge of pride and a pang of fear. "So, what now?" "Now," he said, his voice resolute, "we build a new existence, one they'll never understand." Days passed with our Aelor, and I learning to navigate a life apart from his people. Every glance we shared, every memory we exchanged, felt like a quiet rebellion, a testament to what we'd sacrificed. And yet, beneath the thrill of defiance, there was an unspoken tension, an awareness that the Zythixians would not remain silent forever. One night, as we stood in my garden, our Aelor reached for my hand, his grip firm but gentle. "We may have defied them for now, but they won't forget. Their pride won't let them." "Then let them come," I replied, my voice steady. "Let them see that what we've built is stronger than their fear." And with that, we stood together in the dark, defiant against a universe that refused to understand. In the days that followed, the air seemed to hum with an uneasy stillness, like the silence before a storm. Our Aelor and I prepared, knowing that the Zythixians would not let our defiance go unpunished. Each evening, we reinforced our plans, strengthening the defenses around my home, blending human ingenuity with the remnants of our Aelor's alien tech. Yet, beneath the preparations, an unspoken question hung between us. Could we withstand what was coming? When they finally arrived, it was with cold efficiency. A group of Zythixians appeared in the garden, moving in eerie silence, their features blurred, unreadable. The leader, cloaked in the same dark authority as the emissary, took a step forward, fixing our Aelor with a look of steely determination. "You've betrayed your people," the leader intoned, his voice echoing with icy finality. "There is no place in our ranks for sentimentality." Our Aelor stood tall, defiance sparking in his gaze. "Sentimentality," he echoed. "I've found something more valuable than your hollow logic. I've found purpose, depth, qualities that you've chosen to erase." The leader's features twisted with disdain. "And for this, you're willing to forsake everything?" Our Aelor reached for my hand, his grip solid and sure. "I'd forsake 1,000 lifetimes of empty evolution for one moment of true understanding." The leader glanced between us, his expression turning venomous. "Then let this serve as a final lesson in the futility of defiance." In a single, swift motion, the Zythixians raised their hands, a sharp, piercing light forming in their palms. The air crackled, shimmering with the destructive energy of a force designed to obliterate. But as they prepared to strike, our Aelor stepped forward, his body shielding mine, a fierce determination blazing in his eyes. "You can't destroy what we've created," he said, his voice strong and unwavering. "It's beyond you now." The leader sneered. "You overestimate your impact." Our Aelor's voice softened, calm but unyielding. "No, I understand it completely. You've never seen anything like this because you've forgotten what it means to live fully. We've shown you something you can't quantify, something beyond your reach." In that instant, I felt a surge of energy radiate from our Aelor. It was something pure, fierce, a wave of raw defiance that enveloped us both, forming a barrier between us and the advancing Zythixians. The light around them faltered, dimming under the weight of something they couldn't measure, couldn't control. One by one, the Zythixians hesitated, their cold resolve cracking as they glimpsed the depth of what we'd created. The leader took a final, defeated step back, his gaze filled with something like reluctant respect. "We are done here," he said quietly, motioning to his followers. "May you find what you seek in this path you've chosen." And just like that, they vanished, dissolving into the night, leaving us standing together in the quiet aftermath. Our Aelor looked at me, his expression a mixture of wonder and relief. "They will not return. Not after seeing what we've built." I exhaled, feeling the tension slip away. They saw something they couldn't understand. He nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "And perhaps, in time, they'll realize it's exactly what they've been missing." Hand in hand, we stood beneath the stars, A human and an alien bound by a connection forged in defiance, stronger than any force the universe could throw at us. In that moment, we knew we had found something timeless, a bridge between worlds that no one could ever break.